Battlefield Earth was probably one of the most troublesome films in Hollywood history. In terms of the total chaos that unfolded throughout its production, only films like Cutthroat Island or The Adventures of Pluto Nash can compare. While films typically encounter problems during specific stages of production, Battlefield Earth was out of luck from the start, setting a record-breaking course of misfortune. Films frequently encounter problems before filming even begins. Everyone in Hollywood knew that making a film based on L. Ron Hubbard's novel wouldn't be easy. Everyone except John Travolta. First of all, Hubbard was the founder of the Church of Scientology. Second, his book was always deemed unsuitable for film adaptation. Yet John Travolta was undeterred. Travolta tried to launch a film adaptation of Hubbard's novel back in the 1980s. However, the actor was going through a rough patch in his career at the time. His films kept failing, and Hollywood producers avoided working with him, fearing that having Travolta in the cast would lead to a box office disaster. However, following the success of Pulp Fiction in the mid-1990s, Travolta's career skyrocketed, and studios were at each other's throats to have him in their films. After a string of successful films, when the actor's fees reached $15 to $20 million per role, the newly formed film studio, Franchise Pictures, agreed to work with him. The details of the agreement between the studio and John Travolta remain unknown, as does whether the actor knew what was going to happen to his film. So their relationship can only be judged based on rumors. And rumors suggest that Tom Cruise tried to convince Warner Brothers, the distributor of Franchise Pictures films, to abandon Battlefield Earth. However, the actor's representatives deny the rumors, calling them slander and an effort to discredit Cruise. It is important to note that both Tom Cruise and John Travolta are Scientologists. Whatever happened, Warner Brothers and Franchise Pictures ignored all advice and proceeded with the project in the late 1990s. By that point, the film's script had already been rewritten over 10 times. And when the film finally got the green light, Travolta brought in screenwriter Corey Mandel, who wrote the final version of the script. Travolta, who originally wanted to play Johnny Goodboy, decided he was a bit too old and settled for the role of the main antagonist, Turl. The role of Goodboy went to Barry Pepper, who impressed Travolta the most during the audition. The first major problem arose during the pre-production stage, when producers couldn't find a director for the project. Every director approached by the studio claimed they were either too busy or too tired. John Travolta even reached out to Quentin Tarantino to direct the film, but Tarantino quickly turned down the offer, citing that the material wasn't his cup of tea. In short, after approaching half of Hollywood and being rejected by directors such as Ron Howard and Martin Campbell, the position went to newcomer Roger Christian. Christian's candidacy was reportedly recommended by George Lucas, who worked with him on the Star Wars films. Christian was usually the art director for Lucas's projects. The studio allocated $75 million for the film and, to save money, sent the crew to shoot in the dense Canadian forests, which ultimately led to additional problems. According to actor Barry Pepper, the budget was so tight that the crew was forced to starve while working, because the food provided on the set was the worst he had ever seen in his career. Since the film was shot in remote locations, the crew couldn't easily access fast food restaurants or stores. At some point, everyone working on the production became so fed up that they were ready to rebel, demanding justice from Travolta and the producers. Pepper mentioned that he and a group of colleagues were already planning to disrupt filming. However, the rebellious sentiments were quelled by John Travolta, who ate separately from the crew. Upon learning about the problem, the actor began buying necessary products with his own money and brought his personal chef to the site to feed the cast and crew. According to Barry Pepper, this resolved the food issues and the atmosphere on the set improved. John Travolta and the producers said that filming in the Canadian outback helped the studio save a significant amount of money. Shooting the same film in the USA would have cost at least twice as much. While Travolta was running through the woods on stilts, American journalists were already writing critical articles about the film. Travolta later cited this circumstance as the main reason for the film's resounding failure. One major publication got a hold of the script for Battlefield Earth and, after changing the title to Dark Forces, sent it to the country's top journalists as well as many Hollywood producers for feedback. Later, the publication shared the comments they received on the script. None of them were positive. At best, they described it as silly, predictable, and ridiculous. At worst, reading the script was compared to watching a fly breathe. The real disaster occurred after the first test screenings. The audience criticized the makeup, plot, direction, and each of the actors. Typically, studios try to save the situation by shortening the length of the film, but in that case, those measures wouldn't have helped at all. Therefore, Warner Bros. Simply reduced its advertising budget to the minimum. Director Roger Christian, who once won an Academy Award for set decoration on Star Wars Episode IV: A New Hope, blamed everything on the unreasonably small budget he had at his disposal. According to him, the excessive use of Dutch angles, a technique where the horizon is tilted and the camera looks up at the characters, was a necessary measure because the film's lighting budget was the lowest he had seen in his entire career. His idea was to use these angles to give the film a comic book-like appearance, while also increasing the amount of light in the frame. The only person who refused to give up was John Travolta. In all interviews prior to the film's release, he described Battlefield Earth as the Schindler's List of science fiction, adding that the film turned out much better than Star Wars. To back up his statements, the actor repeatedly promised to release at least 2 sequels and make an expensive full-length animated film. They were supposed to go into production as soon as Battlefield Earth hit theaters. But none of this helped much, as rumors about the project's quality quickly spread throughout Hollywood. There was quite a buzz in the press, and Battlefield Earth hit theaters just as it was at its peak. The film bombed at the box office, grossing only $29 million against its $75 million budget. However, the release of Battlefield Earth didn't end the film's problems. One of the investors sued Franchise Pictures, accusing it of fraud. The official budget for Battlefield Earth was $75 million, but the trials against Franchise Pictures in the early 2000s revealed that the film studio spent about $40 to $45 million on the project. The rest of the investors' money apparently was used for what the studio owners deemed more interesting endeavors. It is worth noting that this wasn't the first time Franchise Pictures was accused of such schemes. The budgets of the films the studio worked on always seemed unreasonably high. As a result of various lawsuits, Franchise Pictures was ordered to pay investors over $100 million. These lawsuits ultimately bankrupted the film studio. A similar story occurred with another of the studio's films, A Sound of Thunder, whose budget, according to Franchise Pictures, was $80 million. Not long ago, Emmett/Furla Oasis Films, renowned for consistently featuring Bruce Willis in their films, faced similar accusations. After the film failed at the box office, almost everyone involved in the production began to speak negatively about it in interviews. According to Barry Pepper, the film's failure was solely the fault of John Travolta, who approved the terrible script. Moreover, the majority of the budget was spent on his fees. Travolta dismissed such claims as lies, saying that he only received $10 million for the film, which was far less than his usual fee at the time. Before Battlefield Earth, the actor received $20 million for his role in The General's Daughter, and later he received the same amount for Swordfish, released after the disastrous sci-fi film. Battlefield Earth won 7 Golden Raspberry Awards. The only person who managed to avoid the award was actor Forrest Whitaker. Whitaker repeatedly apologized to his fans in interviews for appearing in the film. At later Golden Raspberry ceremonies, Travolta's film received additional awards for Worst Picture of the Decade and Worst Drama in 25 years. Multiple publications have listed the film as one of the worst in Hollywood history. Barry Pepper, who received the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Supporting Actor in this film, said that he would have definitely attended the ceremony to accept his award if he had known he was nominated, because he fully agreed with the assessment of his role. The producer of the film, Elie Samaha, agreed with many of the critics' and audience's criticisms. However, he believed that much of the negativity towards the film was fueled by some unfounded hatred of Scientology, which, as he claimed, was not present in the film. He felt that many people were too biased towards the film because of the book, and some of the people involved in the production. The screenwriter, J.D. Shapiro, repeatedly apologized for the film and even attended the Golden Raspberry Award ceremony to accept his Worst Screenplay award. According to Shapiro, who had previously written the screenplay for Robin Hood, Men in Tights, Hollywood had produced hundreds and thousands of terrible films throughout its history, but Battlefield Earth was the worst of them all. Shapiro, however, cushioned his statement by noting that his script was heavily revised by Corey Mandel, who was brought onto the project by John Travolta. However, due to various Writers Guild requirements, he couldn't prevent the studio from using his name in the credits and therefore shared the Golden Raspberry with Mandel. Battlefield Earth put an end to both screenwriters' careers, and they haven't written anything else since. The only person who never said anything against the film was John Travolta. To this day, when asked about his participation in the film during interviews, he says that the movie was fantastic, and he would gladly star in its sequel. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and stay tuned.